right. So how many of you think that we should have a Bill of Rights for our elections, fair elections? Does anyone want fair elections? Let's hear it. So our next guest, Kathy Harms, is here to tell us about it. Kathy is a senior advisor for the National Election Integrity Network. She is also the co-chair of Tennessee Fair Elections. She has a wealth of experience with election integrity and a wealth of experience that she's going to share with you. And I think you're going to find out two things. One is you're going to be really impressed with the progress that's been made in recent months. And I think she's going to give us some marching orders to make sure that progress for election integrity continues. So please, let's give it up for Miss Kathy Harms.
Thank you all so very much. I'm so happy to be here as part of Tennessee Fair Elections and the Election Integrity Network. And with me is Aundrea Gomez, my partner in crime in elections, co-chair of Tennessee Fair Elections. She actually dragged me into this, but she has been a stalwart worker, and we're here to tell you a few things today of what, as Dave said, what has been done and what needs to be done and how exciting this work is.
Well, hello there, everybody. It's a beautiful day. Happy to be here with all of you patriots and my beautiful friend, Kathy Harms. When I was asked to start Tennessee Fair Elections back in 2022, I knew nothing about election integrity, but what I did know was that I had to find the smartest person in the state and probably one of the top 5 smartest people in the country on election integrity and get her on board if this was going to actually grow into a movement, not just an issue. And so I'm so grateful to Kathy for everything she's done and all the mentoring she's provided for myself and for many of you to help us understand this issue of elections. So I have a question for you. Have you heard the Nashville narrative about elections in Tennessee? The Nashville narrative goes a little something like that, like this. We're #1 in election integrity 4 years in a row. Have you heard that? Well, Kathy, are we #1 in election integrity?
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Who came up with that scorecard? That scorecard was developed and is administered where? In Washington, D.C. by a big think tank. And you know, there's some good things in that scorecard. We're up there, and Arkansas is tied with us now for #1 on their scorecard. But you know, we decided after 5 years of fighting for election integrity, maybe we needed another scorecard. Maybe we needed the scorecard that starts with we the people. Because we remember that when Jethro asked Moses, why are you trying to establish this group of leaders? He said to show them the will of God. And when the founders of this country put together this country, they wrote it down in the Declaration of Independence for us, that governments are instituted by men with what? The consent of the governed. So with that in mind, we did our own scorecard. We took it as the grassroots, not some think tank in Washington, D.C., but we went from sea to shining sea, and Rasmussen did a poll. And in that poll, he found out what we the people really want, and today we're here to tell you not just what we want, but where we stand and where we need to go.
So we're going to talk with you today and introduce the U.S. Citizens Elections Bill of Rights. And at some point today, I'm going to ask you to go and grab your own copy and read it, learn it, and understand it so that you can be an ambassador for the U.S. Citizens Elections Bill of Rights. So we have 10 articles here. We're going to kind of condense them for the sake of time, and we're going to go through each of these. So let's start off with one of the things that we hear that is so important, which is voter ID and ensuring that only citizens vote in our elections.
Amen.
Now, you may be thinking, we've got that covered in Tennessee. We have voter ID. Kathy, can you tell us more about that?
Well, we have voter ID. That's why that Washington think tank's so happy. But what they don't tell you is that voter ID is never checked at the polls to see if that person's actually a citizen. Even though we have a great grassroots individual here named Rick Dram, who a few years ago pointed out that the driver's license will indicate temporary if they're not a citizen. But we were told, oh, no, we don't check that. It's only checking the face on the picture matches the face standing before me. Is that the voter ID that's going to give us security that only citizens are voting in our elections? Over 90% of Americans, from sea to shining sea, believe we need to do a better job, and that includes in Tennessee. We need to do a better job before these people get on our voter rolls. You know, a lot of our people come through other agencies and they get registered to vote. But before that is approved at the county level, the county should have the tools to check. And Donald Trump gave those counties that tool. It's called the SAVE system. And guess what? Our counties are not being allowed to use it in the state of Tennessee. The state can check it, and every county can wait till the state does it. But every state today, every county in this state today could be doing this. It's free. It could tell them, everybody on their voter rolls, whether or not you have people on your voter rolls that are not a citizen. And guess what? Who's going to check it to see if they have a vote history? You know, some of our local elections are won and lost by just a few votes. A few votes going by people who don't even have the right to vote could swing an election in your county. Do you want non-citizens deciding who sits on your school board or your county commission or who your sheriff is? I don't think so. I think we can do a better job.
Kathy, can you vote with an expired ID in Tennessee?
Yes, you can. All you have to do, and it doesn't even have to have where you live on it, your residence. And so you can't really match the person up to the precinct that they're in. It's just the face.
Okay, so we talked about citizenship, we've talked about voter ID. Have you heard Trump talk about any of these things? All of the things that we're talking about today in our U.S. Citizens Election Bill of Rights are a part of Donald Trump, President Trump's vision for election integrity. Okay, so let's move on and talk about Election Day and absentee voting.
Yes, that's a big one. We've gotten away from Election Day, and what does Donald Trump say? He says, let's get back to Election Day. So we did that poll. The majority of Americans, roughly 70%, say, restore Election Day. Election season is too vulnerable. We don't know who's voting. There's too many ballots floating around. We'll get to technology in a minute, but votes are being stored on tabulators. So over roughly 70% of Americans don't just want Election Day. They want us to vote in person, in precincts. And if we're going to have absentee voting, they believe you should have to have an excuse. Your vote is a civic duty. And of course there are people who can't make it to the polls. We have people who can vote in person, absentee, but that should be limited to about 5 to 7 days. That's what the American people want. And that's what is in this Bill of Rights.
All right, so in a red state like Tennessee, you would think that our voter rolls are squeaky clean, right? Kathy, how is it looking with our voter rolls?
Well, first of all, we would like to be able to look at our voter rolls, but it costs us $2,400 a month in the state of Tennessee for citizens to get the state voter rolls. That is just wrong. When Michigan can give them to their people, Ohio puts them online. Virginia even reduced them. There are states that don't charge anything. Why are they putting that price tag so high? Well, guess what? We can look at our voter rolls now because we are looking at it through a prism using these algorithms on a database called Check My Vote. And in Check My Vote, we have found we have a few problems. And our county election officers are great people. But they say to us, we don't have the money to clean it all up. We don't have all these budgets because when we find all these people that haven't voted for 8, 10, 12 years, somebody should be contacting them, right? We don't want phantom voters left on our voter rolls, and hopefully people who are dead are not voting. So we have some of these 100-year-old people. And so we need to be able to get our voter rolls for free and work with our county election officials. In Michigan, they're using Check My Vote. They were able to remove a guy who was born during the Civil War and happened to vote in 2020. How do you like that? And so they are fighting. Their election officials are using Check My Vote, 30 of them asked to be trained, and we need to do the same in the state of Tennessee.
All right, this next one I think is going to be pretty big with y'all. How do you feel about replacing all vulnerable or insecure voting technology and returning to only pre-printed, secure paper ballots that are hand-marked?
Woohoo! Well, you're not alone.
You're in agreement with 88% of the individuals that were polled by Rasmussen Reports.
And what are we told by our state? We're not even going to recommend a secure hand-marked paper ballot. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not going to? It's permissible, you can do it, but your county has to do it. And you don't control who your county election officials are. You don't control who's making those decisions. And you don't control whether or not you vote in precincts. More and more every year we have people that in counties asking by election officials to change counties from precincts to vote centers. Vote centers are some of the most vulnerable ways to vote because you're commingling every ballot. You can't have a hand-marked paper ballot because of the hundreds of different types of ballots. And so, in order to get back to a secure hand-marked paper ballot, we've got to get back to voting in a precinct where everybody has the same access, because when you go to vote centers, you're at the mercy of whoever decides where that vote center should be placed, and it may not be placed near your house.
All right, so along with a secure hand-marked paper ballot, which provides the transparency, the ability for you, the voter, to be able to verify that your vote is cast per your intent, we also have this issue of transparency and independent audits. How are we doing with that in Tennessee?
Well, I don't know about you, but I've never been able to crack open one of those machines. The only person that I know in this country that really did a great job at checking to see if there was fraud is sitting in a jail for over 365 days, and her name is Tina Peters, and that's a crime. It's a crime against this country that when you try to get transparency, you are not allowed to know what the software, firmware, anything to do with that. They'll tell you, oh, we're not connected to the internet. Are you telling me you've been in those machines and you know for a fact they don't have any internet capability? Well, Donald Trump has had it with that. He's had it with these barcodes on our ballots, and it's time to get rid of them. And so we need a more transparent audit. If you're voting in a vote center, you cannot go, you're never seeing them going through and counting the actual ballot. You'll hear we have a voter verified ballot. It is not voter verifiable because it's got a barcode or it's got a cash register tape. They're not counting paper when they do these audits. They're putting the ballots back through a machine, and whatever that machine is programmed to say is what the result is. And we can't tell. We're saying we want these audits to be done independently. It shouldn't be done by the same people running our elections. And so we're moving forward across the country with independent audits.
All right, it looks like, Kathy, our time's up, and so I don't think we're going to get to go through all of these additional articles. That's why we brought plenty of copies, so you can pick up your copy of the U.S. Citizens Elections Bill of Rights. We've got them at the Empower Jefferson tent, and I believe at the TFA tent, and we'll see if we can scatter them about elsewhere. You can also come up and get a copy from Kathy or myself, but I want to leave you with this. We need more ambassadors for the U.S. Citizens Elections Bill of Rights. We need you to understand this and weave this into your conversations on a regular basis. Conversations with your county commissioners, conversation with your county election commission, conversations with your county party leaders, conversations with your state representative, your state senator, and every single candidate. They all need to be pledging support for you, we the people, and the U.S. Citizens Elections Bill of Rights. Or I would go as far as to say, if they don't, they do not deserve your vote.
Amen. Amen. And this movement, remember, is going to be nationwide. It is going to be, we've got about 30 states on board, and we're even bringing up the blue states. So if we can bring on a blue state, we should be able to do this in a red state of Tennessee. Thank you all, and God bless you.
Thank you.